How about a magic trick?
Watch closely as I take one of Microsoft's worst nightmares and I turn it into a very, very harsh reality. I haven't been stoked for a Sony product since their logo looks something like this. One of their latest offerings is a Pro Controller that itself isn't super experimental, but it is one of only 5 controllers that has swappable thumbstick modules. For other hot swap controllers like the Thrustmaster eSwap controllers or the Astro C40, this feature allows them to have bisexual button layouts, so you can be an AIDS box or gay station player on the fly. The difference with the DualSense Edge is that this feature only applies to the thumbsticks, which means it's basically only there for stick drift purposes. It's not really a fix for stick drift, and we'll be talking more about that later, but it's certainly better than absolutely nothing. For this review, I'm not actually 100% sure how many hours of playtime I've gotten. I've played a lot of Hogwarts Legacy. No one's talking about it, but the professor's name is Nicholas Black.
Repeat after me.
Okay.
Nigga, please.
Nigga, please.
I worked for close to a month to bring you guys the absolute best review for the DualSense Edge that is available on YouTube, and very soon afterwards, an equally complex comparison video with the Elite Series 2 will be following. So if you're interested in wasting your money on first-party Pro controllers, please be sure to hit the big red button. Since Sony decided to base their Pro Controller on the already existing DualSense, all of the original features that come with the DualSense are available with the Edge. The same body shape and ergonomics are present, you get gyro, haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, the KGB Russian spy microphone. Ever since Sony added this microphone, my lobbies have sounded like this. It's dog shit. I mean, seriously, man. What a fucking terrible idea. Never do that again. Anyways, all the DualSense's original Spidey senses are intact. On the flip side, I'm sure most of you are aware of most, if not all, of the extra pro features the Edge offers, now that it's 14 minutes old and everyone's gotten their reviews out. But I'll still give the spec sheet a quick once-over before we go deep diving. At $200, the DualSense Edge is, to put it very bluntly, a pretty bog-standard Pro controller, aside from the swappable thumbstick modules, which themselves are $20 a piece. The sticks have adjustable dead zones and curves that we'll be getting to a bit later inside the software, as well as 6 interchangeable thumbstick caps. Underneath the thumbsticks are the FN buttons, which can be used to swap the profiles, customize said profiles, or adjust the audio on the fly. And on the back, you have your buttons or your paddles. A set of both is included, which is a first, as well as your 3-way trigger stops, which are in no way related to the Elite Series 2. Finishing off with accessories, you get a USB-C cable, which is 10 feet or 3 meters. I might make fun of the UK audience sometimes. Don't worry, I have worse teeth than all of you. The USB cable also comes with a removable housing or dock to keep the USB cable stable. Abel makes some half-decent music, I wonder what's his label, and the DualSense Edge is so bougie, it comes inside a cradle. The cradle, or case the Edge comes in, I shit you not, weighs the exact same amount as the Edge, almost to the gram. And on the front is a little flap which you can open to charge the DualSense Edge while it's resting inside of the case, which may seem like a surefire way to kill the USB-C port faster, but like I said, you have a removable housing, which is pretty contrary to every other Pro controller where the housing is built into the controller, so if you break the cable the controller comes with, you're screwed. The USB housing is there to decrease the likelihood of a JEV-related event occurring. Here is what a JEV-related event looks like.
Why? Dude, no. Shit. Ah!
To put the cherry on top, you have software customization to complete the feature set for Sony's first Pro controller, and as you can see on screen and on the timeline, there are timestamps for all of it. Let's begin with a clip from a mildly pretentious video.
この DualSense Edge ワイヤレスコントローラーを企画するにあたって、我々はハイパフォーマンスなコントローラーとは何なんだろうというのを自問自答してきました。
You stuck up precious little bitch. Let me tell you something.
Oh boy.
Wait a minute, I'm lost. So you asked this question, and you obviously came to a conclusion. The conclusion was the Astro C40, because based on the $200 price tag, the lack of 4 buttons, and the swappable thumbsticks, it kind of seems like that's what you made. To be fair, they probably mated the Astro C40 with the Elite Series 2, at least based on the shape of the paddles, which isn't a dig, by the way. The Elite Series 2 paddles feel amazing in my hands. The DualSense Edge is no different. They're very, very sleek, they're very ergonomic, but the only $200 Pro controllers I'm aware of that don't have 4 paddles are coincidentally this in the C40, at least for PlayStation. They had 7 whole-ass acres of space to work with, so there's no reason there shouldn't be 4, but I won't harp on them for it, although for $200, it's not a good look. The dome buttons are a very, very solid alternative to the paddles, but I didn't always feel that way. In fact, at first, they kind of felt shitty to me. They take a bit more effort to reach than the paddles, which is why I would assume most people will probably prefer the paddles as they have a lot more surface area to reach. Whereas with the buttons, there's not much surface area and it's a lot more centered. So people who own a DualSense Edge, what do you prefer? Buttons or paddles? Leave it in the comments. I think they're both very, very nice, even though the buttons are just about as stable as my sanity. Above the paddles, we have more genetic traits carried over from the Elite Series 2 in the form of 3-way trigger stops. The only difference between these and the Series 2 is the fact that the dead zones on the Edge automatically adjust. So even when the trigger is set to its shortest length, the dead zone's automatically adjusted so you get 100% of your trigger pull, which is very useful for games like Warzone, where you're like driving cars and shooting people's dead bodies. While we're shooting bodies, I might as well beat a dead horse.
スティックモジュールを交換できるっていうのが長くお客さんにそのコントローラー使っていただくっていうことで、かなり重要なポイントになっていると思います。
交換はできるんだけども、プレイ中はしっかりフィックスされる通信の信頼性もメカニカルな。
So if you couldn't tell, that clip was from the video I mentioned earlier, and let me ask you guys something. Sony's worried about the reliability of a swappable thumbstick. They want to ensure the thumbsticks can be swapped out reliably. But they don't actually care about the thumbsticks themselves being all that reliable. Here's a little heartfelt message from me to Sony. Fuck you. The thumbsticks are horribly unreliable, but we're not going to do anything about that. However, the mechanism that'll allow us to keep profiting from stick drift by allowing the thumbsticks to be swapped out, make sure that shit works 114% of the time. If you think about swappable thumbsticks past the surface level, they don't actually fix stick drift. You're simply swapping the problem out. You still have the issue. It's with the thumbstick itself. The only way to keep stick drift around, but be able to fix it, is make the thumbsticks easily swappable. This way, Sony can spit in your face and say, hey, you want stick drift fixed? You can pay for it. When you start to look into the reliability of controllers, it's a very, very grim situation. But a lot of people are going to be stuck buying something like this, which is why I would never judge anyone for owning one. Your only solutions to stick drift are Hall effect thumbsticks, which one may be made for the DualSense Edge from Gullah Kit. Don't know though. So aside from fixing it yourself, this is basically the most valid solution, at least for PlayStation players, that's available for stick drift. Now, I'm aware I did a little bit of bitching, and I plan to do some more later, but on the bright side, the thumbsticks feel identical to the stock DualSense. They feel just as nimble, just as accurate, and just as smooth, which is admittedly helped by the anti-friction rings. The swappable sticks also have swappable sticks, which I'm sure Vsauce can make a Paradox video on. The Edge comes with a dome and extended dome stick, which are some of my favorite thumbsticks of all time to use because they feel like classic PlayStation 2 thumbsticks, PlayStation 3 thumbsticks, and all the gameplay you see throughout this video, I'm actually using these sticks, and most of the time you'll hear me bitching about dome sticks because they're slippery. These ones have a very, very nice rubber coating on them. But a couple more sticks, or at least a little bit more variety with them, also wouldn't have hurt at all. Hardware-wise, that's about it. And the software it's a little complex. I'll be covering PC and PlayStation software differently because they're two completely different stories. I, first off, don't own a gay station, so I haven't actually gotten to experience the software myself, but luckily, it's no different from any other Pro Controller software, so I've essentially used it 1,000 times before. Much like the Astro C40, GameSir G7, or Elite Series 2 software, you get 3 custom profiles which can be swapped to on the fly via the FN buttons. These profiles can have different mappings for the buttons or the paddles. You can even disable them. You get thumbstick, dead zone, and curve customization, trigger dead zones to make them instant if you want, vibration intensity, and you even get to adjust the intensity of the adaptive triggers. It's nothing special, but I think it's pretty cool that at least on PS5, a lot of these features can be accessed with the on-the-fly buttons. Using FN, profiles can be swapped, that one annoying-ass friend can be muted, and you can even hop into the settings to customize your profiles to, let's say, change the trigger dead zones or whatever. Pro players and playtesters specifically asked that all of these features be built directly into the DualSense Edge and the PS5, which left PC players up the creek without a fucking paddle, because we can't remap the paddles. You probably can't see it from there, but on the side of this box, it says compatible hardware, and a computer's nowhere near there. There's precisely zero, and when I mean zero first-party support from Sony for PC. What they won't tell you is that you can't remap the paddles, the FN buttons do not work, you can't change thumbstick dead zones, you can't change trigger dead zones. The only way to use the DualSense Edge on PC is to either A, have a PS5, create and save a profile to the DualSense Edge, and then use it on your computer and it should work. Or, if you don't have a PS5, like me, you're probably going to be stuck buying DualSense Edge, which is only a $5 software, but still. By not making these features, these pro features available on PC, you basically just have a normal DualSense if you're not buying a third-party software. Or, like I said, customizing it on your PS5, which inadvertently makes it one of the most incapable Pro controllers ever. Please name me another Pro controller where its Pro features are not usable on PC. I doubt they'll add first-party software for this controller, so you're either going to be stuck with Rewast or DSX. And I don't even think Rewast has support yet. As for DSX, I'm actually a huge fan of the software. You can change the colors of the RGB lights, remap buttons, use the adaptive triggers, a bunch of other stuff. I'll probably end up making my own video for it. But without having native support on PC, without being able to, at the very least, even use the paddles, automatically, if you are a PC player and just using this on PC, $60 to $70 of the worth of this controller has been removed without the software. But not only are PC players suffering, console players are too, because I have more to bitch about. I literally have minifigures. Lego minifigures bigger than this fucking battery. The very first session with the DualSense Edge lasted just over 3 hours, and I had under 30% of my battery remaining. The 4-hour number you guys keep hearing thrown around about the battery life of the DualSense Edge seems pretty legitimate, not just for mine, but for what a lot of other people have been experiencing too. After voiding the shit out of my warranty and deconstructing the controller, I discovered that the battery is a whole 33% smaller than the original DualSense. And to dog on the controller further, I compared the battery life while the controller was sitting with white LEDs on to my own DIY PS4 DualSense Edge, which has the back button attachment as well as a couple of other upgrades. And out of a 7.5 hour time lapse, the DualSense Edge failed at around 4.5 hours, even when it wasn't being used, whilst the DualShock 4 soldiered on for another 3 hours. Now, in this situation, the battery wasn't make or break it, it didn't matter, but the fact that it's so shit kind of breaks the controller. And I'll tell you why. Consider the following. Sony didn't make this controller for PlayStation 5 players. PlayStation 5 players, for the most part, play wirelessly. This controller needs to be charged too often to be a normal wireless controller. So they obviously didn't make it for PS5 players, but they didn't make it for PC players either. You guys didn't add PC support. There's no software support. You can't use the paddles unless you find some workaround yourself. So you didn't make it for PC players, and PS5 players are gonna have a hard time because the battery sucks ass. So I'm asking you, Sony, who the fuck did you make this for? At a glance, those are really the only two big issues with the DualSense Edge. If I'm honest, I haven't really seen any reliability problems, mainly because it's kind of just a normal DualSense. At the end of the day, Pro controllers' reliability is most of the time based on what controller they're based on. So a Pro controller built out of a PS5 controller, it's not going to be the most reliable thing. It's certainly not going to be as bad as the Elite Series 2 though. And hey, the Elite Series 2, when it came out, it had a 3-month warranty. People kind of just brush over that nowadays. I know it has a 1-year warranty now, but this controller came with a 1-year warranty from Sony. So if anything does go wrong, you can be sure to hit them up. Unless it's stick drift, then fuck you, you're paying for that. I personally enjoy the DualSense Edge. Personally, it's one of my favorite devices to use, but I don't really allow that to really affect my recommendations because I gotta be honest, man, it's a really hard sell. At least for any normal human being. Like, if you're playing wired 70 to 80% of the time, or all the time, go ahead. It's actually probably a pretty decent idea. The swappable thumbsticks are cool, it's $200, it's got some cool features. It's not the best price to performance device, but it's not terrible. However, the terrible battery, paired with the fact that you can't use it on PC unless you're doing a runaround or paying for a software, if you play wired all the goddamn time on your PC or your PS5, maybe then it's not a bad idea. And if you like the DualSense controller a lot, but you constantly get stick drift, this is also a half-decent idea because you don't need to constantly replace the whole controller. But outside of that, what else is there, man? I'd like to see what other people think about this controller. I personally didn't look up any reviews before I actually received the controller, which is why I had so many fucking issues with the software. But I'd really like to see what other people think about this because honestly, I kind of see it as it's almost perfect. Almost. To be fair, your guys' launch was a lot better than the Victrix Pro BFG though, so I will give credit where credit's due. That shit sucked. Anyways, I love you guys. I have 14 seconds until my camera dies, so,